Mama Amaka, my husband cheated again. I don't know what to do. I have 3 children. I cannot just leave. Leave? Who told you to leave? You mean I should forgive him again? Forgive him? My sister, even a goat knows when someone is taking advantage of its kindness. So what should I do? Nothing. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Go home, cook his food, iron his clothes, smile at him tonight like nothing happened. Mama, you're confusing me, oh. By tomorrow morning, that man will discover something very interesting. What is that?
10 years ago, Ifeoma was not a woman who cried in another woman's kitchen. 10 years ago, she was the girl who turned down 3 suitors because none of them made her laugh the way Emeka did. He was a mechanic then, not rich, not smooth-talking, just a man with grease under his fingernails, and a way of looking at her like she was the only reason his day made sense. They married in a small hall with rented chairs and a caterer who ran out of rice halfway through the reception. Nobody remembered the rice. Everybody remembered how Emeka cried during his vows. For 6 years, they built a provision store that grew into 2, a 3-bedroom house that used to be a 2-bedroom rental, 3 children, Chide, Ngozi, and baby Obiora, who filled the compound with the kind of noise that makes a marriage feel alive. Ifeoma was not lazy. She ran the store's books, cooked every meal from scratch, sewed the children's school uniforms herself to save money, and still found time to rub Emeka's back when business stress kept him up at night. She built her half of the house with her own hands. She just didn't know she was building it for 2. Because somewhere between the 2nd store opening and the 3rd child's naming ceremony, something in Emeka started to loosen. Not break, not yet, just loosen. The way a screw loosens in a chair nobody's checking anymore. You don't notice until the day someone sits down and the whole thing gives way. It started small, the way it always does. A phone that used to lie face up on the table now lived in his pocket, even in the shower. Business calls, he said. Ifeoma believed him because why wouldn't she? 10 years of trust doesn't disappear because a phone changed position. Then came the late nights. Inventory, he said. Supplier meeting ran long, he said. Ifeoma kept his food warm under a plate cover twice until it needed warming twice. Then came blessing. She was 24, worked at the new phone accessory shop 2 stores down from Emeka's, and had a laugh that carried down the whole row of shops. Ifeoma had met her once, exchanged a polite hello, thought nothing of it. Why would she? A man doesn't destroy 10 years for a girl he greets on his way to buy recharge cards. Except he does. He did. It was Ifeoma's own sister who saw them first. Emeka's hand on the small of Blessing's back outside a hotel in Ikeja, a city he claimed to be visiting for supplies. Ifeoma didn't believe it. Not her Emeka, not the man who cried at his own wedding. So she checked his phone while he slept. 211 messages, voice notes, a photo she wished she could unsee, a pet name, Baby E, that Blessing used for a man Ifeoma had called her husband for a decade. She didn't scream. She didn't wake him. She sat on the bathroom floor until sunrise, holding a phone that had just handed her the truth she'd been too afraid to ask for.
When Ifeoma confronted him, Emeka did what men like him always do first. He lied. Badly. Then he cried. The same cry from their wedding day, except this time it wasn't joy. It was fear of being caught. It's nothing. It's finished. I made a mistake. You and the children are my life. Ifeoma wanted to believe him so badly, her chest hot. She had built 10 years on this man's word. Walking away meant admitting the foundation was never solid. And what mother tears down the only house her children have known? So she stayed. She forgave on the surface. She told herself it was over. It was not over. Emeka simply got quieter about it. The messages moved to a second phone Ifeoma didn't know existed. The late nights returned dressed in new excuses. And Blessing, young, hungry for a life she hadn't built herself, started asking Emeka questions no side woman should have the confidence to ask. When are you leaving her? When is it my turn to be the one waiting with food? Ifeoma noticed the money disappearing before she noticed anything else. A rent payment here, a new phone there, small amounts that added up to a betrayal with a price tag. This was when she went to Mama Amaka's kitchen. Mama Amaka's advice was nothing, but Ifeoma, still in pain, still hoping her marriage could be saved the old-fashioned way, tried something first. She tried to fight for him. She lost weight. She bought new clothes she couldn't afford. She stopped asking where he'd been, hoping silence would bring him home the way pressure had pushed him away. She invited his mother to talk sense into him, a woman who, in the way of many mothers, told Ifeoma to manage your husband and no man is perfect. For 3 weeks, it almost worked. Emeka came home earlier, he was warmer, Ifeoma allowed herself to hope. Then, Blessing got pregnant. She announced it the way a winning move gets announced, loudly, publicly, in the shop, in front of Emeka's business partner, so there would be no denying it, no quiet fixing it. Emeka's carefully built double life collapsed into daylight in under 60 seconds. Ifeoma heard it from 3 different neighbors before Emeka found the courage to tell her himself. This is where most stories about cheating husbands end. With the wife broken, the husband ashamed for exactly as long as it's socially convenient, and life resuming its unfair shape. But collapse wasn't Ifeoma's alone. It was coming for Emeka too, and he didn't see it because men who cheat rarely calculate the full cost until it's already been withdrawn from their account. Blessing, now pregnant and emboldened, stopped being the secret and started being the demand. She wanted Emeka to leave Ifeoma. She wanted the second store signed into her name for the child's future. She wanted the respect of the first wife without having done a single year of the building. Emeka, cornered between a wife he'd wounded and a mistress he could no longer control, made the kind of decisions desperate men make. He moved money from the business account without Ifeoma's knowledge, money that was legally both of theirs, to set Blessing up. Blessing was settled up in a new apartment. He missed loan repayments on the second store. He started drinking in ways the neighborhood noticed and gossiped about. Ifeoma, meanwhile, was not sitting still, even though it looked that way from the outside. This is where Mama Amaka's real teaching began. Not the dramatic leave him or forgive him that everyone expects, but something colder and smarter. A woman who screams shows her hand too early. A woman who is silent is thinking. Let him believe you have accepted defeat. Meanwhile, go and find out whose name is on that store's documents. Ifeoma discovered, through a lawyer Mama Amaka connected her to quietly, that the first store, the original one, the one dealt with her own hands and sewing money, was still in legal joint ownership. Emeka had never gotten around to changing it, too arrogant to think he'd ever need to. The second store, the one Emeka was now bleeding dry to fund his second family, was at risk. But the first, the foundation, was untouched and still hers on paper as much as his. Ifeoma stopped crying in kitchens. She started making calls. She quietly withdrew her portion of savings she'd kept separate for years. Money Emeka never knew about, because a smart woman in a marriage like this always keeps something for herself, not out of malice, but instinct. Registered a small transport business in her own name, using contacts from the church women's group Mama Amaka had introduced her to months earlier, women who had survived their own versions of this exact story and now quietly helped each other rebuild. She didn't confront Emeka. She didn't threaten Blessing. She simply began building a life that no longer depended on either of them. And when the bank finally came to seize the second store,
over unpaid loans. The store Emeka had drained trying to please a mistress who was never going to be satisfied. Ifeoma was the one who calmly produced the joint ownership document on the first original store and formally separated her interest from his failing one, protecting what she had built with her own hands from being dragged down by what he had built with his selfishness. Blessing, watching the man she'd bet her future on lose the store, the respect, and increasingly the money, did exactly what such women always eventually do. She left. Not out of morality, out of arithmetic. A poor Emeka was of no more use to her than a poor stranger. She took the baby and moved back to her mother's house in another state, leaving Emeka the way she'd found him, except now with far less than he started with. Emeka lost the second store to the bank. He lost Blessing to her own ambition. He lost the respect of a community that watches everything and forgets nothing. And when he finally, desperately tried to come home, not out of love, but out of having nowhere else left to stand, he found a wife who was no longer waiting. Ifeoma didn't slam the door. She didn't scream at him on the street the way the neighbors had hoped for gossip's sake. She simply told him in the same calm voice Mama Amaka had taught her that the woman he left was not the woman standing in front of him now. You didn't lose me today, Emeka. You lost me the day you decided I was something you could keep and something else you could chase, both at the same time. I just took this long to notice I was allowed to stop being kept. He stood at the gate of the house. The first store's proceeds had helped rebuild that gate, and watched her walk back inside to the children who were still and would always be hers.
2 years later, a young woman sat crying in Ifeoma's kitchen. Her husband had been caught with a girl from his office. She had 2 children. She didn't know what to do. Ifeoma, calmly finishing her food, didn't rush to comfort her the way she once needed to be comforted. Leave? Who told you to leave? So, I should forgive him? Forgive him. My sister, even a goat knows when someone is taking advantage of its kindness. Then what do I do? Nothing. Let him enjoy his new woman. But by the time you're done thinking clearly, he would discover he was never really the one in control of this story. If this story reminded you of someone, your sister, your friend, maybe even yourself, don't just scroll past it. Comment below. What would you have done in Ifeoma's shoes? Leave immediately or build quietly like she did? Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to Inspired Folktales, and tap the notification bell so you never miss our next story. Join us again for another unforgettable story. Until next time, stay inspired.